Welcome to Sushi Anything, the place where we make sushi out of anything. Now today, we're not doing a standard traditional roll. We're doing something that I came up with the other night, and I want to see how it turns out, and that is going to be the pizza roll. What we're going to need for this video is some pepperoni stick. This is basically a giant piece of pepperoni. I had some lying around pepperonis as well, so we're going to use some of them on there. Of course, what would a pizza be without the mozzarella cheese? Beautiful stuff. Of course, you're going to need some pizza sauce, not a ton. And last but not least, my secret ingredient. Basically a whole bunch of really good stuff in here. If you want the recipe, let me know and I'll grab it for you. Oh yeah, and one of these bad boys. Little butane torch. I love this thing. We've got our oven preheated because basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this roll wrapped up, ready to go, and then toss it in the oven for a few minutes just to warm it up, melt a little bit of that cheese and stuff on there. Now, like I said, I've never done this before, so we're gonna find out how it goes. I've got my sushi rice here. If you guys don't know how to make sushi rice, I've got a video about it. It's pretty simple to do. The link should be somewhere up here or in the description. But let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I wanna do is grab one of my little half sheets of nori and put it on my rolling mat. And don't forget, nori has a shiny side and a dull side. The dull side is where we put our rice, especially if you're gonna be putting the paper on the outside. We're not putting the paper on the outside in this one. This one's gonna be a work of art. Now don't forget, whenever you're working with sushi rice, just get your hands a little wet. If they're not wet, the rice is gonna stick to your hands and you're gonna have a bad time. But look at that, a little bit of water, and I can just pick up this rice and get to town working with it, and it's not gonna stick. Now this rice is seasoned. I did still use my rice vinegar on here. I did modify the recipe a little bit. I added a little bit more salt than I normally do. You don't have to, you could use the standard recipe for that, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you haven't seen the how to make sushi rice video, so check it out. Okay, so since we're making the rice on the outside, I've gone all the way to the edges with the rice, put a nice thin layer on there, but before we flip it, what I wanna do is take a little bit of my secret sauce and sprinkle it on top, because that way, it'll make it look prettier, give some color to the outside, but then also when it hits your tongue, that's kind of the first thing you'll taste is that blast of amazing flavor. And if you're wondering, I've got about a half cup of rice here. A half cup of rice will basically make one full nori sheet, sometimes a little bit more depending on how thin you spread the rice, but I've got enough for 2 rolls. So if this thing is good, we're making a second one. But now that it is seasoned, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is pick up the paper and flip it, and now we can start filling the inside. But before we can do that, we have to cut up our little delicious meat stick. I've actually been looking forward to opening this for a few days ever since I bought this thing. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it to about a quarter the length of the nori, and I'm gonna quarter this thing up. That way you have a big chunk in the center of there. So to do that, I'll measure about halfway across and then cut that. Now, like anything in life, too much of anything can become a bad thing. So I'm not just gonna stick the entire roll in the center there. You'd probably choke trying to get it down. So what I'm gonna do is cut a piece about this long and cut it into little strips. So the idea here is if I get semi-thin strips, then I can fill the inside up, and it shouldn't be too much of a pain to eat. All right, so now that I've got my pepperoni stick chopped up, what I'm gonna do is take some of that pepperoni and fill up the inside of the roll. All right, so we've got our pepperoni in there. And don't worry, any extra pepperoni sticks you have, it's pepperoni, you can just eat it. Now for our filling, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this sauce and create a thin little layer in the middle of the meat here. It's funny because with all my friends, I've been trying to tell them about this recipe and everyone's like, oh my God, dude, there's no way that's gonna be good. But I'm like, it's basically gonna be a pizza because sushi rice doesn't have that crazy of a flavor that it's gonna overpower anything. This, I think, is really gonna pair well with it, but only one way to find out. Now we got our sauce spread inside. I'm gonna take a bit of cheese and put it on the inside there. Now you can put as much or as little cheese as you want based on your taste, but I personally like to have a lot of cheese. Now it's gonna be the interesting part. Will it roll up? Let's find out. Okay, well, it did roll up. Okay, so that's exactly what I wanted to see. That is beautiful. That's actually a pretty dang good looking roll, if I do say so myself. But we're not done yet. What I'm gonna do is grab our baking sheet that we're gonna put this in the oven with and put our roll on here and take another just tiny little pinch of cheese, put a little bit of this on the very top of the roll here. And the reason I'm putting cheese up there is because I'm gonna take this pepperoni and I'm gonna cover the top of it. What I wanna do now is I'm gonna take our blowtorch and I'm going to heat up the pepperoni, which will melt the cheese underneath it, solidifying it on top. And your parchment paper shouldn't catch fire as long as you don't put the torch right on top of the parchment paper. And while it's still warm, I'm just gonna kind of bend those guys down a little bit. There we go. Now I'm gonna throw it in the oven for a few minutes just to warm the roll up a little bit, then we'll get it cut. Okay, now just like any sushi roll, we're gonna cut it, but today, since we've got stuff on top, I'm gonna wrap it in cling wrap first. The reason I'm doing that is because it'll hold all your toppings in place. Now you can do this if you've got anything on top. Sometimes you can do it with avocado or fish, but this allows you to get really nice cut lines without all your stuff falling off the top. I'm just gonna do one nice cut there, and then cut that part in half, and that part in half. And there we have it. We've got our pizza roll displayed nicely. You can see that it actually dried out the rice on the outside a little bit, so it wasn't really sticking to my hands, which is kind of nice for once. Usually trying to keep it off your hands when you're cutting it's kind of a pain. The saran wrap works great. It smells interesting. It doesn't smell like a pizza, but it doesn't smell like sushi either. It's kind of like a mix between the two, something that's never been done in my house before. Maybe you guys have made sushi pizza, but what it looks like doesn't mean anything. The real true test is to see what it tastes like. I put the extra little bit of sauce that I have on the plate in case it needs it, but let's go ahead and just take a piece and see what it tastes like on its own. It tastes just like pizza. I will say one thing though, using the pepperoni stick, I think might not have been the best idea. I think next time what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put just the regular already sliced pepperonis. The problem I had with it, you had to really sit there and chew at it for a while. The flavors were great. Don't forget any extra sushi rice you can always throw together in a quick roll, or you can throw it in a pan with a fried egg, some garlic butter, salt, pepper, and soy sauce, and make your own Japanese style fried rice. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you had fun with this video. And hey, now I know how to make the pizza roll version 2. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, everybody.